Did you realize if you own rental property in the city of Omaha, you are now required to register them as of January 1st, 2020? I'll go through everything you need to know to make sure you're in compliance. Hi everyone, Chris Egan, Berkshire Hathaway Home Services here. As of January 1st of 2020, all rental properties within the city of Omaha and within City of Omaha's jurisdiction are now required to be registered. The City Council passed this ordinance back in April of 2019 with a vote of 4-3. I'm going to go through all the basics of this ordinance with you so you know what to expect and to make sure you're in compliance. You have 90 days from the start of 2020 to get your properties registered, and you can do that on the City of Omaha website. I'll link to that in the description below. I had just recently went through and registered my properties on the website, and I thought it was going to be an extremely tedious process, but it was fairly simple. You need to create a username and password, and then once you're on that website, you will enter the address, and then that address will pop up and it will auto-populate the legal description and the owner of record. It will then ask you to identify three people: the applicant, the owner, and then the manager. Oftentimes, all three of those will be one and the same. The only real issue I ran into when registering is that I did notice that properties that have a north or south in the address sometimes have a hard time auto-populating, especially if they're east of 100th Street. So if you had a property, for example, of like 210 North 56th Street, you would need to put in 210 North and then 056 in order for it to auto-populate correctly. After you've registered the properties, you will get an email notification notifying you that your property has been correctly registered with the city. And it's important to note that the cost of the inspections is $125 per inspection, and we'll get into that a little more detail, but you do not have to pay that at the time that you register. The ordinance plans to go after the problem properties starting in 2020, and what they define as a problem property is anything with existing code violations, or they are also going to go after the owners that fail to register their properties. Those inspections will start this year in 2020. The following inspections for everybody else, they plan to start that in the year 2022. So all properties in the city of Omaha that are used as rental properties will be required to have the mandatory inspections. So single family properties will cost $125. They will all have to be inspected. Duplexes will be the same, so they'll be $250. And then multifamily properties, they are going to inspect a portion of those. 15 to 20%, I believe, is what they plan to inspect. And as long as there's no violations, they will only inspect that portion of the multifamily properties. The city is supposed to notify the owner 14 days in advance of the inspection, and that will accompany an inspection checklist as well as a consent form for the tenant to sign. It'll be interesting to see how this ordinance plays out. The city estimates that there's between 70,000 and 90,000 rental units inside the city of Omaha, so that's going to be a big task for them to inspect them all. This was a highly controversial city ordinance with passionate arguments on both sides. I actually watched some of the comments in front of the city council, and it was extremely dramatic, probably unnecessarily so. This video is not really about my opinion on the ordinance, but I will share with you a few thoughts I have. I think this was a bit of an overreaction by the city in response to some of the high-profile landlords that have been in the news recently, and it adds another level of bureaucracy and expense to an already expensive and highly regulated industry. On the positive side, this may help to weed out some of the bad actors, and they will just leave the business altogether. And if they sell their properties and they're picked up by an investor that wants to rehab them and provide a quality house for someone. The other unintended consequence of this ordinance, I think, is that it probably will put upward pressures on rent prices. So depending on if you're an owner or renter, that could be a good or bad thing. So I'd love to hear in the comments below what you think of this ordinance. Do you think it's going to be good or bad for the long term? And thanks for watching another video. And of course, don't forget to like and subscribe.